please welcome Atlantic Council Board Chairman John F.W. Rogers.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to take your seats? We're going to begin today's program. Okay, we can begin when everyone's seated. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Your Excellencies, members of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention for a moment, if I could just quiet down the hall? I'm delighted to be with all of you tonight as we salute the recipients of the Atlantic Council's Distinguished Leadership Awards. Each year, we recognize a select few who represent the best pillars of our transatlantic relationship, whether as political or policy leaders, business executives, military officers, or artistic and humanitarian champions. What they have in common is that each honoree has made an indelible impact on our world, both in their personal and professional accomplishments, and in their vision for creating a better future with our friends and allies. Tonight, as chairman of the Atlantic Council, it's a privilege to be able to say that for the first time in the Council's history, we're recognizing a group of all-women honorees. And we're calling attention to the rising role of women's leadership in shaping a better world. Now, of course, as we gather to celebrate, we do so at a time when such leadership has seldom, if ever, been as crucial as it is today. And while just last week, the Director General of the World Health Organization declared that COVID-19 was over as a global public health emergency, new challenges continue to emerge. A year to the day since we awarded the people of Ukraine a special Distinguished Leadership Award, the war in the Ukraine rages on, shaping a new era of global competition, exposing fragility in international trade ties, and furthering geopolitical uncertainty. It is innocent people who pay the price for war. Their suffering must not be forgotten. What's more, with the souring of the U.S.-China relationship, increased tensions, and potential systemic threat to world order, the post-World War II sense of stability has never been more threatened. The task now before the Atlantic Council is not just to diagnose the geopolitical moment in which we find ourselves, but also to inspire the United States and its partners to enhance their collective efforts to shape a better, more prosperous world. As an Atlantic Council community, we can be encouraged by how our organization is rising to the moment. We have provided action-oriented solutions for protecting Ukraine's sovereignty and freedom, and we have made clear why this war and the U.S.-China rivalry are struggles over what forces, principles, and practice will determine our global future. As we recognize each honoree at this evening's historic all-female lineup, we do so in an era increasingly in search of role models for women and girls. So tonight, we celebrate not just what each of these extraordinary women have done individually to shape our global future, but what they have done collectively for other women to ensure a better future. So in considering my remarks this evening and where words can sometimes fall short of the physical and the visual expression in terms of rising to the moment, I was transported to an exhibit that was unveiled a few years ago at the Venice Biennial by a Nigerian artist, Peju Ulatesha. She's a Nigerian artist, poet, and writer. You'll see her exhibition here. Now, in her cultural and sculptural installation, Flying Girls, she has called for a more just future for girls and imbued the girls with an immense transformative ethos and power in her moving exhibit. We see a striking collection of 8 life-size figures of girls united in a circle, adorned with wings and surrounded by birds and butterflies, shaping a pattern that appears to be a murmuration. That's a large group of birds that all fly together and then they change direction together. You've seen this when you look up at the skies as birds switch their line and move. Notably, the butterflies are seen surrounding the figures on the ground, suggesting a metamorphosis as they emerge from their cocoons and prepare to take their first flight. And we seem to be witnessing a powerful collective transformation of sorts coming from within these girls and future women, preparing them for their first flight with a momentum from the ground up. Using this artistic expression to guide the future, the artist, she transports us to a future where identity is shaped rather than predetermined. This is the same transformation that we are witnessing here tonight, a movement embracing and driven by women and girls globally. In Flying Girls, the murmuration is a winding upward spiral, not only enveloping the girls, but also empowering them. The shape is especially significant as the paths of women in leadership roles itself, because those have never been linear. A befitting segue to the personal and professional stories of our honorees this evening. So for tonight's distinguished leaders, it's not just how far they have traveled, but the way they have traveled along their past. Not weighted down by obstacles or cynicism about what's possible, instead buoyed by a single-minded resolve in their vision for what the future can be. One of our honorees, the Honorable Avril Haines, whom we are awarding the Distinguished International Leadership Award, is the U.S. Director of the National Intelligence. She is the first woman in our nation's history to lead the U.S. intelligence community. And given Director Haines significant national security experience obtained through her service in all 3 branches of government and commitment to building a more resilient, inclusive nation through innovative intelligence, few are more deserving of our recognition. Avril grew up in an apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side. Her father, a biochemist, her mother was a painter. And her mother became seriously ill when she was 12 years old. And still a child herself, she spent 4 years as her mother's principal caregiver, up until the moment of her passing. Left without her own mother as a role model, a younger Avril did not let her grief defeat her. She gathered her strength, she changed directions, and she deferred college for a gap year. She went to study Japanese martial art judo at Tokyo's Kodokan Institute, where she achieved an incredible feat, rising to a brown belt in just 1 year. Later, as a student of theoretical physics, Avril pursued a dream project of restoring a second-hand plane and flying it into Europe. With her flight instructor, she found a 1961 Cessna, and she rebuilt the navigation, communication, and other electronic systems. And not long into their flight, however, they had an emergency landing. But one upside to the failed adventure at that point was that Avril found a lifelong travel companion in her flight instructor, whom she is married to today. Our next honoree Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, whom we are awarding the Distinguished International Leadership Award, is the Director General of the World Trade Organization. She is the first woman to serve in that capacity, the first African in history to serve in that role. Her more than 30 years of public service includes a remarkable career at the World Bank and serving as finance minister of Nigeria, where she navigated intense personal and institutional challenges to implement far-reaching economic reforms. I can say on a personal note, when we started at Goldman Sachs our 10,000 Women's program, it was Ngozi who herself said to us that we don't have a program, we have a movement. And for the last 15 years, her idea has impacted our work on behalf of women and girls across the world. She was born in the Delta State in Nigeria, where her father was the Obi, or king, of the Obi royal family, which makes her a princess. Now, our cultures often assign a narrative that portrays women waiting for a prince to bring some kind of glass slipper to decide if they are fit. Well, she rewrote this, if not demolished that narrative for herself and future girls. She did not wait for a glass slipper. Instead, she shattered the glass ceiling. And along the way, she made sure to create the same opportunities for all girls, especially those who do not come from a royal background, to have this path of economic empowerment. Our third honoree, Adena Friedman, whom we are awarding the Distinguished Business Leadership Award, she's the chair and CEO of NASDAQ. Adena went from working as an intern at NASDAQ to making history as the first woman to lead a global exchange. However, this path from intern to CEO was not a straight line, and after 18 years of working at NASDAQ, she left to join the distinguished Carlyle Group. She became the chief financial officer and managing director and played an integral role in taking the company public during her time there. She returned to NASDAQ. 3 years later, served as its president and chief operating officer, and then she was named the CEO in 2017. And now she serves as chair and chief executive. And as a student, Adena, she was educated in an all-girls private school. And given the stereotypes at the time, she didn't see herself on a path to finance. After watching Sally Ride become her first American woman to go into space, she dreamt of flying high into space and becoming an astronaut. But closer to home, she found a role model in her own mother. Originally a stay-at-home mom, her mother later followed her own calling and went to get her law degree and became the first woman named at her law firm. Later in life, as a mother herself, Adena had a similar moment of awakening, and after years of taking her 2 sons and husband to martial arts classes, she decided to follow her interest and pursue classes herself. And similar to all of our other panelists, but particularly to Avril, Adena rose to a black belt in Korea Taekwondo, which she now credits for helping her become more fearless in business. And fearless she is. And I can tell you firsthand, she's quite fearless. And tonight's fourth honoree, General Laura Richardson, whom we are awarding the Distinguished Military Leadership Award. She's the commander of the U.S. Southern Command. And General Richardson became the first woman Army officer to officially hold the position of Deputy Commanding General of Forces Command, and the only second time that a woman 4-star has laid a combat command. With more than 30-year storied career in the United States Army, her command is the largest in the U.S. Army, responsible for training and preparing active, reserve, and National Guard troops to meet the requirement of commanders around the globe. And as a student, Laura was an all-American swimmer. Her path in life has seen her thrive on land and on sea and in the air. Because when we talk about flying girls, General Richardson got her pilot's license at the young age of 16. a literally flying girl, joining, I suppose, her co-pilot here tonight, Avril Haines. So between the martial arts and the air travel, we see some common central themes emerging, if not symbolic of the empowerment and the uplifting of all women and girls. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we pay special tribute to the women and the girls of Iran. We are awarding the Distinguished Humanitarian Leadership Award by honoring a delegation of Iranian female activists. The tragic death of a 22-year-old, Masha Jina Amini, in the custody of Iran's so-called morality police, has brought the Islamic Republic of Iran's gender discriminatory laws into clear focus, and the subsequent women-led uprising has stirred the international community. It's a privilege to recognize the vast efforts of the activists who will accept this award this evening. Dr. Mahnaz Afghani, the former Iranian Minister of Women's Affairs and President and CEO of the Women's Learning Partnership, who unfortunately herself fell ill and couldn't be with us tonight. Azam Jangravi, one of the girls of the Revolutionary Street, who was arrested for protesting against Iran's laws requiring women to wear a hijab in public. Dr. Merajiz Kar, Iran's women's rights lawyer and writer, and Nazim Noor, Iranian actress, writer, and activist. The bravery of Iranian women and girls in risking their safety to achieve change is unquestionable. And together, this delegation's advocacy, utilization of their public platforms to raise awareness of the circumstances in Iran has been crucial to accountability efforts. In their honor, I wanted to offer just a closing piece, a closing art piece, intentionally using a double entendre on the word peace, as the artistic expression is meant as a global peace offering. The picture that you see here is by an Iranian artist, Shireen Neshat, as part of a collection of black and white photographs of women symbolizing Iranian women's involvement in efforts to improve women's education, increase representation in government, securing new legal rights, and expanding their economic opportunities. In this particular detail, the women's hand, its gesture suggests prayer. And the handwritten calligraphy on the edge of her white veil translates from Farsi, "Give a hand so I can hold a hand." Now this message, "Give a hand so I can hold a hand," conveys a peaceful and powerful message of unity that symbolizes tonight's event, its theme, and all of our women honorees. It calls out to our global community, especially poignant in this pandemic recovery era, to reconnect our hands, literally and figuratively. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all being here to celebrate these remarkable women. On behalf of the Atlantic Council, our co-chairs for this evening, I just want to take this moment to offer our hands in celebration of their honors. Thank you. I now direct your attention to the screen for a look at our first honoree.
If I have the honor of being confirmed, I look forward to leading the intelligence community on behalf of the American people, to safeguarding their interests, advancing their security and their prosperity, and to defending our democracy, our freedom, and our values.
Avril Haines was sworn in as the 7th Senate-confirmed Director of National Intelligence in U.S. history and the first woman to lead the U.S. intelligence community.
I am grateful and even more so humbled by the trust that you placed in me for this role. I'm especially honored to be standing not only by your side, but also alongside some of the most talented and inspiring public servants this country has ever seen.
She understands the role of intelligence in policymaking and has deep expertise when it comes to working with members of the intelligence community, which include 18 different organizations.
Are we paying attention to the resilience of our critical infrastructure and our work? And all of those things are going to be what's going to make us sufficiently agile and flexible to address the challenges of the future, but the people are at the absolute top of that list. And it is fundamental that we get the most talented folks that this society has to offer and bring them into the IC so that they can help us understand what's happening and be prepared for that future.
Haines brings intellect, focus, leadership, and dedication to national security policymaking and has soared to become the respected figure on the world stage.
To present the Distinguished International Leadership Award, please welcome Atlantic Council International Advisory Board Chairman, Stephen J. Hadley.
Avril Haines, Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Assistant to the President and Principal Deputy National Security Advisor, Deputy Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. The first woman to hold each of these positions, 2 decades of service in all 3 branches of the federal government. This is the official record of Avril Haines' life as a public servant and her enormous contribution to the safety, security, and prosperity of our nation. But there's another story here of a truly remarkable person. For this story, we must turn to the unofficial record of her life as contained in a Newsweek article dated June 26, 2013. The picture here is of a person with a flair for adventure, an appetite for risk-taking, and an ability to overcome adversity. Some examples. From age 12 through 15, caring for a critically ill parent. After high school, as John mentioned, taking a year off to earn a brown belt at an elite judo school in Tokyo, Japan. Studying theoretical physics at the male-dominated and unwelcoming physics department of the University of Chicago. While in college, working as an auto mechanic, helping to rebuild Subaru internal combustion engines. Fighting her way back from a serious biking accident between her sophomore and junior years of college. The following summer, taking flying lessons in Princeton, New Jersey. Rebuilding the avionics of a 1961 twin-engine Cessna 310 aircraft and outfitting it with extended-range fuel tanks. Taking off in that rebuilt airplane from Bangor, Maine, to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Losing one engine, then the other, to North Atlantic ice and through fog, making an emergency landing at a small airport in Newfoundland. After graduating from college, moving to Baltimore, Maryland, buying at auction an old bar in a then transitional neighborhood, and turning it into an independent bookstore and cafe. Becoming a community activist and pursuing a law degree at Georgetown Law School. Graduating, clerking for a federal appellate judge, and then working in the State Department's legal advisor's office. a 2-year stint working for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee under then-Chair Joe Biden, and in 2011, becoming Deputy Legal Counsel to the President for National Security Affairs. And as they say, the rest is history. An unusual route to the top, but then Avril Haines is an unusual and extraordinary person. All of this by someone described as having a sweet personality, humility bordering on shyness, and a deep empathy for others. Or as Dennis McDonough, President Obama's then White House Chief of Staff, is quoted as saying, "She is as caring and decent a person as I've ever had the blessing to work with, full stop." A person of humility, intellect, integrity, judgment, and a strong work ethic. Tonight it is a privilege for the Atlantic Council to be able to honor the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. Please join me on the stage.
All right, that was utterly terrifying. I am just, Steve, it is genuinely overwhelming to be honored alongside, first of all, such an extraordinary group of female leaders by an institution that I have so much respect for and whose leadership in the form of all of you and the many remarkable board members who are here tonight in particular, embodies the best of what I aspire to in public service. It does not feel quite real, to be honest. I also realize, though, that this award is really more of a testament to the work of the intelligence community that I have the privilege to represent, and the many thousands of officers who day and night around the world relentlessly work to advance our and our allies' national security, of which there are many, many women who are just, I think, looking out today at the extraordinary awardees who I am put up against, or which I have no business to be, but nevertheless and are inspired by them. To the council and the board, thank you so much for this honor, but even more so, thank you for the years of extraordinary service that all of you have engaged in, based on our common conviction that a healthy transatlantic relationship is fundamental to the strength and quality of an international system that is capable of addressing today's challenges in a way that is consistent with our values. And Fred, you recently noted in testimony that we're living in an inflection point in our history where US leadership alongside allies and partners will have global and generational consequences, and I quite agree with that perspective. In our annual threat assessment, we talk about two sets of strategic challenges that are intersecting with each other and existing trends to intensify their national security implications in today's world. First, great powers, rising regional powers, and an evolving array of non-state actors are vying for influence and impact in the international system, including over the standards and rules that will shape the global order for decades to come. And second, challenges that transcend borders, including such issues as climate change and global health security and transnational criminal activity, are intensifying as the planet emerges from a COVID-19 pandemic. And further compounding this dynamic is the impact that rapidly emerging technologies, such as generative AI, are having on governance, economies, and communities around the world. And the intersection of these challenges underscore the importance of working together with partners and allies, private industry, organizations like the Atlantic Council, which bring us together and raise the standard of our work on a nonpartisan basis with the belief that through civil discourse we can advance our common cause. And much like you, we in the intelligence community are trying to understand and reflect on the world around us and to provide policymakers and operators with insights that will help them make better decisions. But we know that interactions with those outside our community who will test our hypotheses, provide alternative perspectives, identify our biases, and challenge our underlying assumptions are absolutely critical to our success. We know that the success of our mission depends on our ability to work with others across a range of fields and disciplines, and it requires us to engage with diverse voices and perspectives from all backgrounds and walks of life, voices and perspectives that are here tonight as a hallmark of what the Atlantic Council represents, demonstrating the degree to which you can and do enrich our daily work. In short, thank you for your tremendous dedication to global cooperation and for bringing together the right people to solve some of the world's most pressing problems. And thank you again for this incredible honor, and congratulations to the other recipients, all of whom really outclass me. Thank you.
Now, to put this promotion in perspective, there were 6,372 officers that were commissioned in 1986 with Laura. And of those, only 47 became general officers of any rank, and only 5 achieved the rank of general. So that's a selection rate of less than 0.07%, a very impressive accomplishment.
We're building a shared neighborhood where every woman, no matter her background, her race, her education, she can climb as high as her hard work can take her.
Army General Laura Richardson flew helicopters in Iraq and led an assault helicopter battalion.
Else in the military can you be a helicopter pilot, work at the White House, work at the United States Capitol, work at the Pentagon, and lead American sons and daughters in combat?
Leading Army North in welcoming our Afghan guests to new lives in the United States. Our Army, our nation are in good hands with Laura Richardson leading.
To present the Distinguished Military Leadership Award, please welcome Atlantic Council Executive Vice Chair, Adrian Arsht.
It's really such a pleasure to be here to present this next award to someone whose life and career have been dedicated to the protection and prosperity of each of us here tonight. Now let me provide a bit of context for you. How and when did I meet General Richardson? I attended the change of command at Southcom in October of 2021 to celebrate the retirement of the Southcom commander, Admiral Craig Fowler. And thus, I met the incoming commander, Laura Richardson. And as a footnote, Craig Fowler has become a distinguished fellow at the Adrian Arsht Latin America Center and the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security here at the Atlantic Council. General Richardson has served in the United States Army for the past 37 years. She leads by example, showing others, in particular men, that it's possible to forge a path many would deem impossible. From an early age, General Richardson set goals that few would think achievable. She earned her private pilot's license by the age of, I was told 15, John said 16, but you get it. Don't you love it that 2 honorees were pilots before they could vote? And if you think she spent all of her time in the air, think again. She was also an accomplished competitive swimmer, and I might say, like Christine Lagarde, who was equally a synchronized swimmer in France. It's easy to see why the Army was eager to recruit a person with such gumption, and it certainly makes sense that her accomplishments wouldn't have stopped there. From commanding an assault helicopter battalion in combat in the 101st Airborne Division to serving as the Chief of Army Legislative Liaison to the U.S. Congress, and now as a decorated 4-star general, she has consistently earned accolades for her contributions. Obviously, it's particularly special to me that General Richardson has had such extraordinary accomplishments across South and Central America and the Caribbean. As you know, that's my wheelhouse. In addition to strengthening military relationships with our neighbors to the south, General Richardson has maintained a steadfast U.S. presence in Latin America and the Caribbean by providing COVID-19, climate, and humanitarian crisis relief, focusing on how to impede the illicit drug trade and prioritizing 21st century security challenges. Now, more than ever, General Richardson's role in working with regional partners across the Americas will be pivotal in building a more secure, equitable, and prosperous future for the region. Simply put, she is a beacon of leadership for women and girls who wonder if a career in the military, in a cockpit, or in a room often filled only with men is a career worth pursuing. She is an undeniable example of leadership, integrity, and determination. And now, it is my great honor to present the Atlantic Council Distinguished Military Leadership Award to my friend, badass General Laura Richardson.
Well, good evening, and thank you. I'm deeply humbled to be here this evening, and I'm honored to serve this great nation in uniform and to represent the men and women of America's armed forces. Adrian, thank you for introducing me tonight. I, like many others, are so grateful for your example and your life's work in giving back. Everything you do through the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arce Latin American Center make this world a better place. Thank you for your leadership and your friendship. To the Atlantic Council, I am enormously grateful to receive this award this evening. A special thank you to Chairman John Rogers and CEO Fred Kemp for your exemplary leadership and the amazing work the Council does day in and day out to provide in-depth analysis on overwhelming, complex issues across our globe. As the 32nd Commander of the United States Southern Command, I can tell you that we have benefited immensely from the in-depth analysis for 6 decades that the Atlantic Council provides. I'm proud to say that U.S. Southcom will celebrate its 60th anniversary on the 11th of June this year. Latin America and the Caribbean is a vast region of 31 countries with 28 like-minded democracies, and U.S. Southern Command works very closely with their military and public security forces on security cooperation initiatives. All of this is based in human rights, the rule of law, and the professionalization of their forces. But now this region requires a call to action. All of our partners are struggling to deliver for their people. They're suffering from the devastating impacts from COVID and the 170 million people that were thrown into poverty. This is a vicious cycle of insecurity and instability that transnational criminal organizations create. They are more powerful, they're violent, and they have diversified their portfolio. They not only traffic drugs, they traffic humans, they conduct illegal mining, illegal logging, deforestation, and illegal fishing. This, combined with climate change, severe droughts, extreme storms, and 7 million Venezuelans who have fled into an already desperate Western Hemisphere, is causing people and families to leave their homes for a better life in historic numbers of irregular migration. If that weren't enough, this desperate situation allows the Chinese Communist Party to step in with its Belt and Road Initiative under the disguise of investment, but really to extract the country's critical infrastructure. With its debt traps of loans, shoddy work, cost overruns, and bribery of senior officials. Countries have no other choice other than to turn to the CCP to try and show some sort of progress for their people. And Russia, with its prolific disinformation campaign, delivered through Russia Today Español, Sputnik Mundo, Telesur, with over 31 million followers in Latin America, it only further exacerbates the situation, and especially during presidential elections. But there is a solution to these complex challenges, and it starts with the United States, because Team USA is committed to democracies across the globe. Bringing together all of the elements of national power in a strategic, focused effort at the same time to form Team Democracy and assist struggling democracies to overcome these challenges. And so they don't have to rely on a communist government such as the CCP for help. It's diplomatic by having our US ambassadors confirmed and in the seat, economic through our private sector investment, which we need to bring to bear and showcase, military, which I represent with US Southern Command, and informational by flooding the information space and capturing the narrative with what Team Democracy is doing for partner democracies in the region. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this topic and about this hemisphere. President Biden says that in his national security strategy, that no region impacts the United States more than the Western Hemisphere. I agree, and this region is our shared neighborhood, and good neighbors take care of each other. I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of United States Southern Command and on behalf of the 28 democratic Western Hemisphere military and public security forces who are working overtime every day on the stopwatch to deliver safety and security for their people. And what a privilege to be recognized tonight alongside such amazing women who have accomplished so much. This group is a representation of how far we have come, but also a reminder of how much more work there is to be done. Tonight, I stand in awe of the courage and the resilience of all Iranian women and girls. Women, peace, and security is a critical component of successful democracies, and it's a key part of all the engagements that I do in the hemisphere. We must be intentional about recruitment, retention, training, and advancement of women, because if we take our eye off the ball, we risk losing an entire generation. As we set out to shape the global future together, none of us can do it alone. We need a community like the Atlantic Council and everyone here tonight. I've been fortunate to have a great community of support made up of family, friends, and colleagues. I'd like to thank my husband, Jim, who served in the Army for 40 years and spent 35 of it married to me. Our daughter, Lauren, and my granddaughter, Anna, who are here with me tonight, for all the love and support they provide. Thank you, Atlantic Council, and ladies and gentlemen. I just want to thank everyone and really appreciate everything that the Atlantic Council does, Adrian Arst, and all of you here this evening. Thank you very much.
Adena Friedman is an extraordinary example of leadership in business. From her early start at NASDAQ to her time at the Carlyle Group, and then returning as president and CEO of NASDAQ, Adena's tireless determination towards innovation and her business acumen clearly sets her apart in all that she does.
At the end of the day, my job is predicated on making NASDAQ an incredibly successful business for the long term. And whether I'm a male or a female, that's what I'm going to be measured on. That's my report card.
Adena's passion and dedication to lead NASDAQ and its employees is exemplary. With Adena at the helm, she will no doubt take NASDAQ to extraordinary heights and beyond.
To present the Distinguished Business Leadership Award, please welcome co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, David M. Rubenstein.
Over the years, I've made a number of personnel decisions at Carlyle. I hired a young man out of Harvard Business School, Glenn Youngkin, and he was okay. I don't know what he did. He decided to leave. I hired another person out of government, Jay Powell. He decided to leave also. I don't know what he's doing either. But in some of my personnel decisions, I've made some pretty good decisions and some pretty bad decisions. I'll let you judge whether those decisions were good. But there was one person I interviewed once who was simultaneously the best personnel decision I made and the worst personnel decision I made, and that was Adena Friedman. And let me explain. Carlyle was looking for a chief financial officer, and we interviewed a number of people, weren't happy with any of the people we saw, and then I interviewed Adena Friedman, and in 10 minutes I said, excuse me, I called my partners and said, stop all the interviewing, I've just spent 10 minutes with the person, this is the perfect person. She's smart, experienced, hardworking, and she really knows finance, and perfect. And so we immediately hired her, and she served as our chief financial officer in a period of great growth for our firm, and she helped us go public in 2012. At that time, I thought she would, if she stayed, she would wind up probably running the company at some day, and she was extremely talented, but she told me that she had an offer not too long thereafter to go back to the place she'd previously been, NASDAQ, where once she did some interim job, she would wind up most likely as the CEO, which she did in 2017. And the worst personnel decision was we let her go. in the sense that we should have said, become the CEO of Carlyle now. The founders, get rid of us. Put her in. If we put her in, the company would be much more valuable today than it is, and we're doing much more successfully than it is. That was my worst personnel decision, is letting her go back to NASDAQ. Because let me tell you what she's done at NASDAQ. When she took over at NASDAQ, the market capitalization was roughly $11 billion. Now it's roughly about $28 billion. So it's up about 146%. Their stock is up about 144% or 15% a year. And honestly, Carlyle has not gone up 15% a year. Many times at night I think about what a mistake I made to not let her be the CEO right away. But she's done better things, and she's done a terrific job, and she has a great future. I thought she should be the Secretary of Treasury in the beginning of this administration. I told a number of people we should finally have a woman be Secretary of the Treasury. Finally time that they found another woman who was available, and Adena was not really interested in leaving, and she was really interested in continuing to run NASDAQ. And she's done a great job there, but there are other great things in her future, there's no doubt, because she's so smart, talented, knows how to get along with people, and what she's done for NASDAQ is not only increase its market value, but she's made it more than an exchange. Many of you who are not in the business world may think it's like the New York Stock Exchange. It's not. It does have an exchange element to it, but it provides enormous amounts of technology to exchanges around the world, and it has technology relating to cyber technology and cyber security that is really second to none. So she's really modernized the exchange, she's made it global, and she made it one of the most admired companies in the financial service world. So, as I've said to some of you before, perhaps you've heard me say this, it is a strange situation that in our country, when we only had we had about 3 million people in this country. We produced George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton. Now we have 330 million people in the country. Where are the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons and the James Madisons? Well, I've often thought they were in private equity. But actually, there is one person who is not in private equity who is as good as the people that I just mentioned, and that is Adena Friedman. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a president of the United States someday who would be, a great financial executive, somebody who's run a company, knows how to get along with people, very smart, respected all around the world. And so someday, I think that Adena Friedman will be the first female to be president of the United States, which would be a good thing. Now, the principal problem with that is she's about 4 decades too young. You need to be about 75 to 80 to be taken seriously as president, so she's got a long way to go. But mark my words, at some point we'll have a female president, and I think her first name is going to be Adena. Adena, thank you for everything you've done for Carlyle, and thank you what you've done for our financial service system around the world. Could you please come up and accept the award?
That was unexpected. Good evening, everyone. What a great honor it is to be recognized tonight as a recipient of the Distinguished Leadership Award. I am truly humbled to be among this amazing and incredible group of accomplished and groundbreaking leaders receiving this award tonight. It's also an honor to be recognized by the Atlantic Council, an organization that recognizes a fundamental truth about the moment that we're living in. When faced with global challenges, we must find global solutions. And this is, in fact, the ethos at NASDAQ. We know that markets are foundational to strong economies and to vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystems. And that's why we're committed to using our expertise and our technology to help build trusted market infrastructure all over the world. In addition to serving our own markets, both in the United States, and we also own many of the markets in the Nordics, with our technology and expertise, our technology powers mission-critical operations at more than 2,300 financial institutions and 130 marketplaces worldwide. Our marketplace clients rely upon us to help them build vibrant capital markets within their countries, which then serve as the underpinning of their economies. Additionally, our bank clients turn to us to help them eradicate criminal activity within their banking networks with our world-class anti-financial crime technology solutions. While our technology serves many economies in the established markets, such as Switzerland, Japan, Singapore, to name a few, we are very proud in the emerging markets as well. We serve markets in places like Indonesia, Thailand, Chile, just to name a few as well. We have many markets in the emerging world. And then there we can support their efforts to bring in more foreign investment through well-functioning, high-integrity, and vibrant capital markets. And that kind of reach and that kind of responsibility is what makes our team at NASDAQ really excited to get up every single day, come to work, and to power markets for the future. It's also what drives our commitment to becoming the trusted fabric to the global financial system. So I want to thank all of you here. I want to thank John Rogers. You have been such a supporter and a friend over many years. I also want to thank my husband, Mike, and my best friend, Nancy, who's here tonight. It's so nice of them to join me for this. And I want to thank all of you for this great recognition. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Atlantic Council President and CEO, Frederick Kemp.
How exciting it is to be here yet again. Avril Haines, what you represent, thank you so much for mentioning my own testimony to the House Intelligence Committee. It is a historic inflection point. Our leadership as a community is absolutely crucial to how this turns out, but thank you for your leadership. General Richardson, we heard about a lot of your firsts from Adrian Arst, but I want to mention another first, which is this is the first time we've had an awardee who has come here with 3 generations of family. Her daughter, Lauren, her 6-year-old granddaughter, Anna. I met them both before we began this evening. You may be very respected, impressed by military leadership and her leadership, but a 6-year-old girl at a dinner like this, any of you who've had children, that is real leadership. Adena Friedman and David, this is the first time we've had a presidential nomination at the Atlantic Council dinner. I really want to salute our chairman, John Rogers, for his inspiration at the beginning of the evening, putting all of this in context, and thank you as well for your leadership as chairman of the Atlantic Council. As John said at the outset of this evening, we provided our greatest honor last year for the first time ever collectively to an entire people, the people of Ukraine. President Zelensky accepted the award by video, telling the stories, harrowing stories, of several individual heroes. Said Zelensky, and I quote, "Behind the courage and wisdom of our people, there are thousands of real stories, names, and heroic feats." 15 months later, that Ukrainian courage and historic unity of its democratic allies has held thus far. As we brace for a potentially decisive spring counteroffensive, the response to Russian aggression has been remarkable thus far. But it has thus far also remained insufficient to turn the tide. At this historic inflection point, we stand with Ukraine. We are resolute in our commitment to this generational fight for freedom, democracy, national sovereignty, and a global system based on the principles, institutions, and values that the Atlantic Council has defended for more than 60 years. As we affirm our commitment to Ukraine tonight, and as we head into the dinner break, I am honored that we are joined by a remarkable Ukrainian pianist, Myroslav Mikolenko, who will perform for us as we prepare for our break. He was born in Kiev and began studying piano at the age of 6. In 2017, at age 13, he and his family moved to the United States to continue his studies. In the years since, Myroslav has gone on to receive high honors and critical global acclaim. He will perform Melody, the greatest piece by the Ukrainian composer Miroslav Skorik. It was scored for a heavily censored Soviet war film in 1982, and the very piece of music was meant to find a way and a better way toward freedom. So with that, Myroslav, it's our honor to hear you play this remarkable piece of music.
Please enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Good evening. I hope you're enjoying the evening so far. I'm Guy Sunia, the director of the Strategic Litigation Project at the Atlantic Council, and we're coming live to you from the Anthem in DC. We are delighted to be honoring the women and girls of Iran this evening for their heroic activism over the past 8 months, leading anti-government protests in the country to demand their basic human rights and dignity. You'll hear from 3 incredible Iranian women honorees tonight who will be accepting the award on behalf of Iran's women and girls. You'll learn more about them when they accept the award later this evening, and I encourage you to watch a panel that they recorded earlier today at the Atlantic Council, and you can learn more about them there. The panel was moderated by PBS NewsHour's Ali Rogan, and we encourage you to watch it. After we take a break from the live programming here tonight, there will be lots more that will come ahead. The live show will return in about an hour, where we will present an award to the director of the World Trade Organization, and the Iranian activists will join us live. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Dagres, and I am a non-resident fellow with the Atlantic Council's Middle East programs, and I'm honored here to give remarks for today's Atlantic Council front page event. Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. Jian, Jian, Azadi. Women, life, freedom. The slogan heard across the globe. Contrary to the lack of media coverage, this month marks 8 months of ongoing protests in Iran against the Islamic Republic. Protests that have taken place in various ways, from street gatherings, rooftop chants, graffiti, to public displays of not wearing mandatory hijab. This continuity is unprecedented. The clerical establishment is in a tinderbox situation, and it's only a matter of time before the protesters pour into the streets en masse because the people of Iran have had enough. They want the regime gone. As I speak, over 13,000 schoolgirls have been poisoned at schools across the country. Many believe this is a punishment for their participation in anti-establishment protests. Additionally, in the past 2 weeks, there have been an alarming rise in executions, with over 57 executed. Human rights organizations widely believe that these wave of executions are an effort to instill fear and silence dissent. Every day, women remain defiant against mandatory hijab by appearing in the streets without the veil, and even in some cases, dresses and shorts, items of clothing only seen at home behind closed doors, ordinary freedoms we here take for granted. The world admires and applauds the bravery of the people of Iran, but especially their women and girls. As an American of Iranian heritage, I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce this incredible cohort of Iranian women who will be accepting the 2023 Distinguished Humanitarian Leadership Award on behalf of the women and girls of Iran at tonight's annual Distinguished Leadership Awards at the Anthem in Washington, D.C., which I should note will be live streamed. Dr. Mehrangiz Kar is a human rights lawyer and an activist. She was one of the first women attorneys to oppose the Islamization of gender relations following the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Kar has been an active public defender in Iran's civil and criminal courts and has lectured extensively both in Iran and abroad. Azameh Jangravi is an Iranian paralegal, human rights advocate, and former political prisoner residing in Canada. She is primarily known for being one of the girls of Revolution Street during the protest against compulsory hijab in 2017. Jangravi was taken into custody in 2018 after removing her headscarf in protest on Enqilab Street, standing atop an electricity transformer box and waving it above her head. She was later released temporarily on bail and fled from Iran to Turkey before relocating to Canada. Nazanin Noor is an Iranian-American actress, writer, and activist. She has appeared on shows such as Netflix's Big Mouth, Madam Secretary, and Persia's Got Talent, and can currently be seen in the film 1,000 Little Cuts on Showtime. Noor could most recently be seen on stage in Washington, starring in the studio theater production of English. She is one of several Iranian Americans in the public eye speaking out on the ongoing situation in Iran. I'd like to also note that Dr. Mahnoza Afkhami is sick with COVID-19 and was unable to attend, but she is recovering. Finally, I'm delighted to introduce our brilliant moderator, Ali Rogan of PBS NewsHour. Ali, over to you.
Holly, thank you so much, and welcome to everybody in the room today and to all our viewers tuning in online. And I'm honored to be joined by these three incredible women. As Holly mentioned, we are here today to discuss the state of women's rights and human rights in Iran from pre-revolution all the way to the current Zanzadegi Azadi movement. And we can do all that in 45 minutes. That is a very steep task, but I know that this is a very well-equipped group to do just that. So let's get right into it. The first question I'm going to ask, and parenthetically before I do, I want to note, I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience here and online. So please submit your questions in the format that's already been presented to the group. And for this panel, each of the questions I'm going to ask, the first one will be open-ended, and then each one will be directed to one of you specifically, but I invite anybody to weigh in as well. So the first question. As Holly mentioned, the Islamic Republic is doubling down on its oppressive tactics. It's increased, there have been 13,000 schoolgirls that have been poisoned. Hangings are at a historic high. So what do these oppressive measures tell you about the state of the regime and whether or not it is under pressure from these protests? Whoever would like to begin. Maybe we go down the line. Dr. Carr.
As you know, in this movement, regular women, students of university, students of high school, all they were and they are involved with that. And in Zan Zindagi Azadi, all Iranian women from all layers of the society, they were working, and now they are working in some other style. And something that you ask about that, like poisoning daughters in high schools. We think the reason is because they were working a lot in the movement, and one of their activity was because probably you don't know that in Kitab-Hay Darsi school books, the first page is a picture of Khomeini, and the second page is a picture of Khamenei. And the students of high school, sometimes they were, taking out these pictures from their school books, and removing in front of the camera, and these, film and video. Posted to some media outside the country, and that's the reason. I think they are very against daughters in high school, and we think that now this is some kind of revenge. Sometimes intiqam giri, intiqam ju'i. And the government doesn't care about that and doesn't say anything and doesn't investigate, very serious investigate in that. And they don't say that, what is this? Sometimes they say something that is not true. They say some part like وزارت آموزش و پرورش, the ministry that this kind, is related with that. They say that this is not true. This is something that pretend that. There is nothing. There is no poison. And this is something that the people in Iran now, they are very angry with that, because the students of women students, daughters and students of high schools, they don't have any safety, any security. And the parents now, they are very angry, and they go around the high schools and they say, if the government cannot guarantee our daughters' life and our daughters' security, we will go around the high school and we will, find something that they poison them. And this is our duty if the government doesn't do their duty.
So that's going to be a big test. But I'm curious to get all your thoughts, and I apologize, we didn't discuss this in advance, but who do you think is behind these poisonings?
The government.
Is it the government?
I mean, everybody believes it's the regime is complicit, because this is also a regime that has eyes and ears everywhere. They kidnap dissidents abroad and bring them back for execution. They have intelligence on dissidents abroad. There was a kidnapping that was that the FBI foiled a plot against a leading voice, Masih Ali-Nejad. So it's very difficult for anybody to believe that a regime that uses facial recognition technology to send tickets to women who aren't wearing their hijab properly cannot find out who's behind these poisonings. So everybody believes that the regime is actually behind this. And it's been going on since November of 2022. So that's months now that this has been happening. And there's countless videos on the internet from activist groups within Iran that are showing girls in hospitals, with oxygen masks. They can't breathe. They smell tangerine in the air or rotten fish in the air. So it's very real. And I know that the regime tries to downplay it, but it's also very difficult to kind of loiter around a girls' school in Iran. And so again, that's why it's very difficult for anybody to believe that the regime is not complicit in this. Parents that have gone to ask questions are met with brute force by regime forces. So not only are no answers being given, this is still continuing. As of just a few days ago, we saw videos from other poisonings, and it's across all cities and provinces in Iran too. So. Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is, Azam, is this an example of the regime really feeling the pressure that they are taking these steps of poisoning young girls?
Actually, I don't know. It's really complicated, but it might be their regime is behind of this situation. Mehrangiz and Nazanin mentioned about poisoning, and I want to talk about executions. Well, the government is now trying to create fear among people by increasing execution. In the past 10 days, over 55 people have been executed in which 26 Baluch citizens executed, and I think despite the suppression of Islamic Republic of Iran, but the protest is ongoing in Baluchistan, and every Friday they shut down the internet, and I think we have to talk about Baluchistan and Kurdistan, and because the suppression in that areas every time increased by the Islamic Republic of Iran.
That's a very, very important point. Azam, I want to stay with you and ask, let's take a step back and let's talk about the factors that led to this round of protests.
The protests that begin in mid-September were unprecedented in their scale and duration. People from all levels of society, including women of various entities, in cities, and social classes came together to demand change. A key point of contention was the mandatory hijab laws, which require all Iranian women to cover their hair. And although the protests were initially led by women, they soon expand to include men as well. The government attempted to suppress the protests with violence and repression, but the movement continued to grow and gained momentum. People from different backgrounds joined in, driven by a shared sense of frustration with the current government. While there have been some reports of misinformation circulating about the government's intention, most people understand that the issue of mandatory hijab is just one of the many issues that need to be addressed. It is clear that until there is real change in Iran, people will continue to demand change and speak out against the injustice in Iran. As I said, the government is now trying to create fear among people by increasing execution. 2 men were executed in the past week, and Youssef Mehrdad and Sadrullah Fazlizadeh were executed for just running online group criticizing Islam. A dual Swedish-Iranian citizen also executed last week. Additionally, more than 11 individuals are currently on this row in connection with the recent protests. The world has been outraged by these killings and has called on Iran to stop them. We need to act now and raise our voices and call on the Islamic Republic to stop the executions.
Nazanin, to Azam's point about the need to raise your voice, we've seen some really interesting subversive ways that protesters, especially the young women and girls in Iran, are using social media. They're using just formats that the regime is not familiar with to register their dissent. So does that add a new dimension that we haven't seen before in previous iterations of these protests? And how is that affecting how this message is being communicated to the regime?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media has been a huge help, actually, in this movement. It's the first time that we've seen it. Gen Z is very adept at using TikTok and Instagram and figuring out how to make things trend and go viral. An example of that is the video of the girls of Ekbatan. I don't know if everybody saw that video, but there's a song by Rema, a popular Afrobeats artist, with Selena Gomez, and they have a song called Calm Down. So these young girls made this dance video, and then they were detained afterward, of course, and had to give a forced apology video. But that went viral, and that caused everybody around the world from various countries. I mean, it was like trending billions in hashtags on TikTok. And it raised awareness for people to understand what's actually happening in Iran. It gives people outside of Iran a connection to those inside, showing, hey, we're actually more similar than you might think, because a lot of people don't have information on what Iran was like prior to 1979 either. And so social media has been a really huge tool in pushing this forward. And this is also, the Gen Zers are the ones who are at the forefront of all of this. And as Dr. Karn Azi said, these poisonings seem to be a retaliation for the fact that they have been ripping out pictures of the Supreme Leader. They've been setting fire. There's countless photos now that are iconic that Time replicated, with the girls with their backs to the camera, with the middle finger. So all of these things that they're doing, they're very smart. They know exactly how to get the attention of people across the world. And we have never seen that level of social media activity to move a movement forward when it comes to Iran.
And it's fascinating because it really does seem to be techniques using forums that are just completely unfamiliar to, especially the conservative clerics. So Dr. Carr, for you, you have for a long time, part of your scholarship has been about tracking the divisions between the moderates, the reformers within the government, and the hardliners, looking from the 1990s to now. So can you get us up to date on what is the balance, what is the tension currently in the regime between moderates and conservatives? Is there any tension there, or is it just completely overrun by conservatives? How do you see those tensions playing out now versus in previous decades where there was a bit of a reformist element?
At the beginning, I would like to say that I practiced as a lawyer 22 years in Islamic Republic of Iran. So when I started the practice as a lawyer in Iran, I was very young. And immediately we had Islamic the revolution, Islamic revolution, and the victory of Khomeini in this revolution. So, so I had been in a very complicated situation, not because I was a lawyer, but because I was a woman and lawyer. I think two criminal, two criminal in their, in their eyes, because they immediately they said that women cannot be judge, so they removed all female judge from judiciary system, and. We were not sure that they give us permission to continue work as a lawyer, but they did. And they said because everybody is able to choose a lawyer, probably a mad lawyer, a crazy lawyer, and this is an Islam that Islam doesn't care about that. This is something that the people.
If you want to choose a female lawyer, that's your choice.
Yes, it's your choice. If you want to choose a mad, lawyer, that is your choice, and that's why we could. We could survive. This was the reason, the base of our job. So I can say that since Khomeini ordered for mandatory hijab, this movement started in Iran and continued. But sometimes it was very slow, it was very hide, sometimes it was getting clear and obvious. I can say that in first decade, we were very, very active for mandatory hijab and for something that is full of, our penal code and family law after they came on power are full of discriminations against the women, gender discrimination, and we can say this is some kind of gender apartheid. And but we cannot have a demonstration. Just somebody like me started talking and writing about this discrimination, legal discriminations. After that, the second, we had involved with a very bad war between Iran and Iraq, and 8 years we had been involved that, and that's why everything was closed about women's rights and human rights, and nobody could talk about that in any other country that is involved with war. So we can say that during the time, everything was slow or nothing. Nothing was active in that way. After war, after 8 years that the war was over, Hashemi Rafsanjani was on power as president, and he ordered open very small opportunity for writing and talking about something, but under control, under very heavy control.
And remind us, this was in the 1990s?
1990s, yeah. Yes. And because I should make short everything. This is history, and it is not easy.
No, it's
and
not.
After,
You're doing a great job.
After 1990, we reached 1996, and 1996 is very important period of revolution history started, because the name is reformism movement. Mm-hmm. And the president Khatami and the people, most people of Iran, for the first time, they voted to a president of this system, this political system. After that, because the slogan was different, like rule of law and like we should have civil society, it was very important, because he ordered, and the reformists ordered, that women can have independent NGO. And it was very helpful for women. It was the first time that something like that happened in Iran. But either during this time, they didn't give me permission. Because it,
during the reformist era.
Yeah, everything was under control. And they said that no, you cannot have any NGO, any, and I do have all documents of that. But some of young Iranian women, they could register and they could be active as NGO. This was something that started, another kind of
activism, or another kind of activism.
Yes, as NGO.
Yeah.
And they could be very active. And then after that, we had some campaign, like 1 million signature, and no to stoning, and something like that. And Iranians, some part of Iranian women, they came to street, and it was very important. They came to public era, and they were talking, and they were giving a slogan against discriminations, not against the political system. But after that, step by step, Ahmadinejad came and stopped everything and suppressed all women activists, and they most of them, they left Iran, and now they are all over the world. And after that, everybody thought that everything is stopped, and never be active about women's rights. But as you know, and as you see now, everything is full of energy, and it started as جنبش movement مهسا and زن زندگی آزادی. This is full of energy. This is full of anger, and this is different with some other that we had been before that.
And to Dr. Kar, to your point about how many activists left Iran, so now the diaspora is very rich, very, very vocal. And so Nazanin, I'm curious to get your sense of what is the state of the diaspora now? Are they united around these protests, any more so than perhaps the cohesion was in previous years?
Yeah, I want to say just to that point too that you brought up of Canada being differences in the government, reformists, et cetera, that the information coming out of Iran and people I talk to on the ground, most people don't see any difference between any, they all think it's this, they're all cut from the same cloth. So it's a regime that's irreformable and irredeemable in the eyes of the overwhelming majority of Iranians. To the diaspora, yes, I remember in 2009, I was actually in Iran. I got there 2 days before the election, the Green Movement elections, and I witnessed what happened afterward, which was the violent suppression and oppression by the state to quash those protests. And I remember that it must have been like a blip in the American media. It maybe was in a 48-hour news cycle and then it was gone. And we've had protests that have built up in Iran since, the last 12, 13 years, but if you want to just go back 2017, 2018, 2019, there was the Bloody November in 2019, 1,500 protesters got killed within a few days, and it wasn't on the news at all. And now we saw that actually, yeah, the diaspora rallied around the people of Iran. I have never seen that level of unity in the entire time that I've lived in this country as far as, giving a spotlight and attention to Iran. There's protests and rallies that have been held in major protests and rallies held in cities and countries all over the world ever since September. Most of them are happening in cities every weekend. And while we would love more media coverage and attention and a spotlight kept on Iran and all the atrocities, the poisonings, the executions, the fact that the people want this regime gone, the unity that I've seen and the level of attention is something that I've never seen before. And it's absolutely necessary and vital to keep, because their internet gets cut off. They don't have the means a lot of the times to get the messages out. So it is up to the people in the diaspora to continue to amplify their voice and make sure that the world hears what they're saying and what's actually happening inside of the country.
Absolutely. Let's take a couple questions from the audience. I invite anybody who has a question. While you're thinking of your questions, I'd love to ask, Azam, you were one of the kind of, as we say, OGs of the anti-hijab movement. You stood on an electric transformer, as we said. You're a girl of Revolution Street, which is where these protests were happening. So what does it mean to you to see these women and young girls in the streets now?
The fight for women's rights in Iran has been ongoing for over 44 years, as Mehrhangiz says. One of the first protests against mandatory hijab in Iran occurred on March 8, 1980, where women have used various campaigns, activist groups, NGOs, and to protest the violation of their rights and demand justice and equality. However, they have paid heavy price for their activism, including suppression, threats, imprisonments, and mental and physical torture. In 2018, when I decided to protest against mandatory hijab, there were already ongoing protests against the regime in Iran. The Iranian public was expressing their anger in the protest with the wide range of chants direct toward the regime and its leadership. In the same days, Wida Mowahed performed a symbolic act of acting her scarf off and putting it on a stick to peacefully protest hijab laws, a brave move that followed 40 years of women's activism. And this is important because the 44 years ongoing activism, and I also wanted to be part of these 40-year-old movements and raise my voice against mandatory hijab laws. As an Iranian woman, I had experienced a lot of problems in my life, particularly when I decided to separate my ex-husband. These difficulties made me more aware of inequality and separation that Iranian women have to endure. This made me think about what was happening to Iranian women, and I felt compelled to protest against such cruelties, you know. I believe that each woman in Iran has experienced similar problems as this is a year of separation. My hope was to be part of the activists who cared about creating more awareness in society. And on the day I protested, no one stood by me or supported me when I was arrested, you know. And right now, we have seen every man stand for women. This is the more important things. I think this learning and becoming aware process has done so that men are now standing by women, fighting for human and women rights.
To that point, and I'm so sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off, Azam, but I do want to get to some audience questions. And somebody asked something that I think ties into this, which is the solidarity that we're seeing. Is that translating to internationally? Somebody asks, how do you see the influence of regional solidarity among women? Is it active in places like Afghanistan? Are they giving each other energy and support as needed? So let's broaden it out and look at the regional solidarity that's happening. What are you all seeing? Whoever wants to take that. And I think, unfortunately, that may be our last question of the session.
I mean, there were videos of women in Afghanistan that were marching with signs in solidarity with the women of Iran as well. I mean, they're neighbors, and you know, Afghan women are under terrible suppression and oppression themselves. And I feel like there has been a global outcry, but there needs to be more. There's actions that have been taken by various countries. At the UN, there's a fact-finding mission that was created. You know, people banded together and got the Islamic Republic kicked off the Commission on the Status of Women, for example. But I still feel like there hasn't been the amount of solidarity that there needs to be and the amount of support for this. It's a human rights issue, it's a human rights crisis, it's a women's rights crisis. So we need people from around the world in various countries that also believe in women's rights and human rights to also stand up for the women, girls, and the people of Iran.
Excellent. And somebody else asks a question, with all that is going on, we see regional neighbors like Saudi Arabia normalizing ties with Iran. What does this mean for the protest movement? Are there any implications with other countries in the region normalizing ties with Iran?
You mean the relationship, the new relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
Yes. Are there any implications there for the protest movement?
The protest. I cannot find any, you know, reason for divorce. Divorce. And we cannot predict the future of these negotiations because a lot of, you know, challenges are between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and I don't believe that everything could be. But we know Saudi Arabia that everybody knows is very serious with Islam and with limitations and the discriminations, gender discrimination. But now we are hearing that something is changed either in Saudi Arabia, and that is something that Iranian people, they are watching that, and they think why they are, you know, they are pushing to very bad situation, worse situation, and Saudi Arabia is going toward, and this is something that Iranian women now, they think about that, but they don't compare themselves with women in Saudi Arabia because we had a very different background during Shah, during Pahlavis. Pahlavis changed a lot of things in Iran, like women's rights.
Right.
But also anything that legitimizes the government is not going to be a good move. Anything that emboldens them is not going to be a good move or solidifies their status. But it's not deterring people in Iran from protesting in their own ways. They still do come out to the streets. It might not be at the same effect as it was a few months ago, but the fact that women are taking off their hijabs, men are supporting them, also by wearing shorts, by the way, because that's not allowed. So that's one way that people are dissenting using civil disobedience. So those types of things are continuing to happen, and they're not going to stop. And schoolgirls, university students in general, boys and girls, have been protesting for the last few weeks as well. So I don't believe that is going to stop what has already started in Iran. There's no going back, is what the people of Iran say.
In the time that we have left, I'd like to go around and in a few sentences, can you tell me what you would like to see from the international community to give the support that this movement needs? Dr. Carr, would you like to begin?
Yeah. Now we can understand that it's not enough that human rights institution, international human rights institution, work for removing gender discrimination in Iran. Now we can understand that all Western government, they should work with human rights institution, because as my friends mentioned about execution, now is very important if they can stop it, because if everybody is getting crazy in Iran by this situation, and either us that are outside Iran, when we get these news, we cannot, what could we do? Right. Because 6 hours they do one execution in Iran now. And all of them, the court and the investigation, it is not justice. They don't have lawyer. They don't have lawyer, and the lawyer is coming from government, and it is related with government. So, so we can say that international community can do a lot of work for Iran, but so far we cannot see any results of that in this movement that now it is our focus.
As an internet security researcher and digital security trainer, my concern is about internet, because the Islamic Republic of Iran, when want to suppress people of Iran, they shut down the internet, and it would be good for Iranian people if the international community find a way to help people for internet, and especially VPNs, especially support us for helping people for internet shutdowns.
Right. We've seen that the sanctions don't really seem to discriminate between uses for speaking out and for doing business with the regime.
Exactly.
Nazanin.
I just think overall the global community needs to condemn the actions of the Islamic Republic, not legitimize them. Even the smallest action, like heads of state when they meet with Islamic Republic officials about women not wearing the headscarf, it's not obligatory, they don't have to do it. I think things like, the UN just appointed the Islamic Republic to a commission that's overseeing human rights, and it's an absolute slap in the face to Iranians, because they just executed 2 people a few days ago simply for running a social media channel that was questioning religion. So the world needs to stop doing things like that, because all they're doing is solidifying and emboldening the regime. They need to pass legislation and do things that support the people of Iran instead of emboldening the regime. They need to hold them accountable for human rights abuses. They need to, list the EU can list the IRGC as a terrorist organization. The US can pass the Massa Act. There's a lot of things that can be done that haven't been done yet, and I hope to see that.
Nazanin Noor, Behangiz Kar, and Azam Jangravi, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a fascinating conversation, and congratulations tonight on the award that you are receiving from the Atlantic Council. It is so well deserved. I think we can all join in a round of applause for this incredible panel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
CEO of Dow Jones, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. I'll say a little bit more about him in a second. The famed American basketball coach, John Wooden, who, as you know, is a very famous transatlanticist. That's actually not true, but he is a famous basketball coach. But the famous basketball coach, John Wooden, once said, quote, "The true test of a man's character is what he does when no one is watching." Perhaps it is Almar Latour's character that I most admire about him. His personal decency, his integrity, his humility, his consistency of devotion to the First Amendment and to our journalistic craft has been unflinching, whether as a young reporter or as one of global journalism's most influential executives at Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal. Oh yes, I think I should reveal my bias. Almar, in 1995, was my intern. He worked as my intern in Brussels when I was the managing editor of the Wall Street Journal Europe. A prime case study of Almar's character is how he is now championing the ongoing global response to the imprisonment last month of Evan, the Wall Street Journal reporter in Europe. Almar's been on the front lines as a reporter. I've been on the front lines in various war zones as a reporter. If you've done that, you feel even more deeply than you would otherwise about what it takes to defend the First Amendment, and then what it takes of all of us to respond at a moment like this. With great pleasure and great affection, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage my friend and also an Atlantic Council Board Director, Almar Latour.
Well, I believe Fred made clear one thing, always be nice to the intern. So thank you, Fred, and thank you, Atlantic Council, and thank you, everybody here, for your brief attention, and congratulations, amazing honorees. There's probably no group gathered in one room together that's as committed to freedom as all of you are. You have dedicated your professional lives to that. And I know many of you have put your actual lives on the line for freedom, so thank you. Tonight I come to you to talk about a shared commitment to freedom. As Fred mentioned, 6 weeks ago, our colleague, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, was unjustly arrested in Russia. He remains today incarcerated in a Russian prison on false charges of espionage. Ever since, we are so grateful for the outpouring of support from colleagues and partners around the world, from the US administration, including the White House and state, and from all of you here today. And just today, actually here in Washington, we saw more bipartisan support for Evan as 70 members of Congress wrote a letter to Evan directly, condemning the time that was stolen from his life and vowed to continue fighting for his release. As all of you know, there was no espionage. He was merely doing his job. Evan is an accredited reporter dedicated to explaining the evolving story of Russia to the world. Not only did Russia take away one man's freedom, but his arrest is also an assault on a broader freedom, and that's the freedom of the press. And as we all know in this room, there is no free society without free press. Sadly, Evan's case is the latest in a long and very disturbing trend. Reporter Austin Tice was kidnapped in Syria almost 11 years ago and remains missing today. More recently, publisher Jimmy Lai remains imprisoned today in Hong Kong, and just last week, Nicaraguan journalist Hazel Zamora was arrested and charged with spreading false news. She now faces up to 10 years in prison. All in all, a record number of journalists, 363 of them, were imprisoned in 2022 alone, and that figure has nearly doubled since 2015. So, we all know this. Journalism is under attack. Like Vladimir Putin, dictators around the world are determined to stamp out independent reporting, and we cannot allow them to succeed. Evan's arrest is a symbolic reminder of the fight that we find ourselves in today. It's autocrats versus the power of the pen, disinformation versus reliable information as the bedrock of free society. The world is watching. It's watching how the US and democracies everywhere respond to this assault on the press. The world is watching how we in this room are responding. As defenders of freedom in this room, we have to form a united front. We cannot rest until press freedom is secured. We will not rest until Evan's freedom is secured. He and others like him need to come home now. The fight for their freedom ultimately is a fight for all of ours. So please, keep Evan at the forefront of your conversations and do what you can in your position of responsibility to make sure that the strongmen the world over know that this room will not let freedom whimper away. Thank you again for all that you are doing every single day, and God bless.
Thank you for that, Almar. It's an incredibly important message. There's so much we have to do on the front lines of freedom now. I know it surprised a lot of you who know me well that Almar was my intern, since we look pretty much the same age. But thank you all for a remarkable first half of the evening. As always, thank you to Luke Frazier and the American Pops Orchestra. Big round of applause, please. And also to the remarkable Robert Pullen and Nouveau Productions for the staging, and to the breathtaking Atlantic Council team that put all this together. Thanks as well to Marcus Dola of Penguin Random House for the books you will see in your gift bags as you leave. Marcus Dola, a member of our International Advisory Board. Now, he always gets a big round of applause from the crowd here. Don't forget to take your bags. The books are always one of the highlights here. Most of all, thank you for gathering tonight as a community of common cause. 550 of you from more than 40 countries, including former heads of state, cabinet ministers, members of Congress, CEOs and business executives, civil society and media leaders, artists, and previous Atlantic Council honorees, including Adrian Arsht, Lord George Robertson, and Luis Alberto Moreno, who are all here this evening. Thank you for being here. It was nearly 43 years ago this summer that I arrived in Poland at the beginning of the solidarity strikes as a young correspondent, as a very young correspondent, covering a story that would change Europe and I believe would also change the world for the better. I was sent to Poland by my employer at the time, Newsweek magazine, to cover rapidly spreading national labor unrest of the solidarity movement that united not only 10 million members, but all of that country of 39 million, and then millions more across the entire Soviet bloc that were looking for sparks of freedom and hope to change a long period of oppression. I only came to appreciate the freedoms that were my American birthright as the son of German immigrants when I witnessed close up an entire country that was risking everything, their freedom, their jobs, their safety, to attain the freedoms that I had taken for granted. It was a time for me, at a very young age, of dark foreboding, fear of Soviet invasion, and even worse oppression, but also it was a time of opportunity and ultimately would bring about the collapse of one of the most oppressive systems history has seen. I feel that same sense of foreboding and opportunity today as we watch Putin's war, Russia's war in Ukraine. I also feel a similar sense of gratitude that I felt then to the Polish people, to the Ukrainian people, to remind me once again of what it takes to defend freedoms we take for granted. Yet, in Poland, the trick was stopping an invasion and then ultimately attaining freedom that was not theirs. In Ukraine, it's defeating the invader that is trying to rob the freedom that has been spreading and to reverse a period of hope that was set off by the triumph at the end of the Cold War. It is a historic inflection point of breathtaking significance. Putin's war in Ukraine has shown a bright light on the fragility of the post-World War II order that has sustained peace and stability on the global stage for nearly 8 decades. Against that backdrop, China's rise as a global superpower poses an even more significant challenge to that world order, which has guided our community for decades. It's a time for common cause, not for war, not for violence, for common cause to reestablish our belief in our values and what it takes to defend them and then to adjust to a new period of time. Some people say we have to separate the war in Ukraine from China and China's challenge. I think the challenges are inseparable. This is not a time for half measures. The future of the global order is at stake. Its institutions, its principles, its values, as imperfect as they are worth defending. And that is what motivates the Atlantic Council and our mission and our purpose of, quote, shaping the global future together with our partners and allies. And I hope that's why many of you are here tonight. These headwinds have produced a stronger, more relevant, and more global Atlantic Council, as our chairman, John Rogers, said earlier this evening. So first and foremost, and this is the time of night where we get to salute all of you who are participating in this community. I would like to ask the following groups to stand. Atlantic Council board members, please stand. Atlantic Council International board members, please stand. And International Advisory Board members, please stand. And Atlantic Council staff, please stand. Please join me in applauding this remarkable group. . God, I'm so lucky to have my job. As is our tradition, I also want to salute tonight's co-chairs who are in attendance and whose generosity allows us to do our work. Please stand as I call your names, but I also ask the audience to hold its applause until I conclude. Adrian Arsht, John F.W. Rogers, Airbus represented by Jeff Niddle, Blackstone Charitable Foundation, Bradley represented by John Skeeters and Carl Hopkins, Georgetown Entertainment represented by Franco Nusqueze, Chevron represented by Colin Parfit. And Colin, I'm sorry, I practiced how to pronounce your last name. I'm not sure I got it right when I was sitting with you earlier today. Ahmed Chirai, Edelman represented by Gurpreet Brar. Gurpreet, that's a big applause. FedEx represented by Gina Adams. Hunt Consolidated represented by Paul Schulze. Kirkland and Ellis. John and Susan Klein. KNDS, makers of the Leopard, represented by Bob Schultz and Ron Phillips. Cruel Plus, represented by Alexander Mirchev. Leonardo DRS, represented by William Lin. MAPA, represented by Nahir Nardimchi. William Marone. NASDAQ, represented by Adena Friedman. One America Bank, represented by George Lund. Amit Oren. Penguin Random House, represented by Marcus Dola. Charles O. Rizzotti. SAIC, represented by Nazik Keen and John Bazell. Thales, represented by Alan Pagrini. A round of applause, please, to everyone. And finally, please applaud yourselves, 550 people from 41 countries, for being here at this historic time to salute these remarkable honorees and to support our work. Thank you so much to all of you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please turn to your screens again for the next element of our program, our Distinguished International Leadership Award.
Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is a renowned global finance expert, an economist, and an international development professional with more than 30 years' experience working on 5 of the 7 continents around the world.
Being the first woman and the first African means that one really has to perform. I've always said these are wonderful things. It's groundbreaking. All credit to members for electing me and making that history. But the bottom line is that if I want to really make Africa and women proud, I have to produce results. And that's where my mind is at now.
Famous for her courageous work as finance minister of Nigeria, Dr. Ngozi dealt with the effects of corruption, including the kidnapping of her own mother. She is the definition of bravery and resilience.
Choosing a DG WTO should be on merit. If that person happens to be a woman, great. If she happens to be African, great. I hope it's a sign not only to women and girls in my country, but to women and girls worldwide that the world is ready and women can do it.
Dr. Ngozi is a tireless advocate for change and continues to be an example and beacon of hope for women everywhere and for the next generation.
And above all, we have to engage our young people. We have genius in our young people. I see it every day. It's what makes me wake up in the morning and feel ready to go. We have to unleash the genius of our young people, get out of their way, support them to create and innovate and lead the way. And I know that they'll lead us in the right direction.
To present the Distinguished International Leadership Award, please welcome American University President, the Honorable Sylvia M. Burwell.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I am particularly proud to celebrate the first all-women slate of Atlantic Council Distinguished Leadership Awardees. I have had the honor of knowing Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala for over 2 decades. We first crossed paths when she was the finance minister of Nigeria, and I was working at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we collaborated to improve health and increase economic well-being on the continent of Africa and beyond. And since then, we've had the opportunity to work together on many other economic and health issues. And over the course of our friendship, I have been lucky to bear witness to her dedication to service, her incredible range of abilities and talents, and her warmth as a human being. Ngozi and I recently sat down together for a discussion at AU's School of International Service. And during our conversation, she reflected on her childhood growing up in Nigeria, raised in her early years by a grandmother who taught her that our worth in life is defined by how we serve our community. She shared how this belief has always led her to ask this one simple question before taking on a new task: how will this help others? Ngozi has carried that commitment to community through her time when she first came to the United States as a teenager to go to school, through to her work as a 2-time finance minister in Nigeria and foreign minister, the first female in both positions. Her 25 years of impact and record-breaking at the World Bank included the $49 billion International Development Association replenishment of concessional resources to assist poor countries. Her contributions to United Nations and G20 commissions as chair of the board of Gavi, her many academic achievements, and her role as a mother and grandmother, and now as the Director General of the World Trade Organization. As the leader of the WTO, she is committed to ensuring that the preeminent global trade organization works to enhance living standards, to help create employment, and support sustainable development. She is a global visionary who believes that trade can help women and other marginalized populations beat inequality, and that the WTO has an important role in increasing economic well-being for all. It is truly my honor to present my friend, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, with the Atlantic Council's 2023 Distinguished International Leadership Award. Welcome.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Sylvia. That was really beautiful. You yourself, you're a prime example of the kind of leader that women and girls look up to. I want to start by thanking my family, because I wouldn't be here today without their love and support. And I have today my sister, Dr. Njide Odochi, my son, Okechukwu Iweala, and my indefatigable advisor, Nicole Mensah. Thank you for being here with me today. Chairman Rogers, President Kemp, dear Fred,
Thank you so much for this recognition by the Atlantic Council. Thank you for the work you do to make the world a better place. And thank you in particular for the work you're doing in Africa with Ramayade, trying to look at the glass half full rather than the glass half empty, at the innovation, the creativity, and the wellspring of knowledge in the continent. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here tonight, and when I see familiar faces like Luis Alberto, like Melan, it really makes me feel at home. Thank you for this immense honor. I'm humbled to share this podium with the sterling cast of women that we've seen today. I don't know if Avril Haines remembers, but when I was competing for the job of WTO, I had the occasion to ask her for advice. I was introduced to her by someone, and she was absolutely supportive and helpful. Thank you. We live in what feels like an era of unending crisis. When I talk to young people, they're on edge. Instead of hope, there is fear. Fear for a future of uncertain jobs, climate crisis, and geopolitical tensions that could escalate into catastrophe. In this kind of world, we all need to sit up and take action. We must believe that there's still reason and room for hope, that there's a more prosperous, more sustainable future for people everywhere. In a world of doom and gloom, we must remember the positives. So my message to you this evening is that in our uncertain world, we need multilateralism more than ever. We need places where nations can come together and truly interact even when they disagree. In fact, especially when they disagree. The World Trade Organization is one such arena, a platform where nations, including the United States and China, are able to engage on the trading relationships that deliver benefits to and connect the lives of billions of people each day. We need to shore up the multilateral institutions we have instead of taking for granted the services they provide. Yes, of course, these multilateral institutions, the WTO included, need to be reformed to be fit for purpose for the 21st century. But we must bear in mind the good they've done for 3/4 of a century. This cannot be wished away. The WTO and its predecessor, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, helped deliver 75 years of what, by historic standards, has been an era of peace and unprecedented prosperity. Over 1 billion people were lifted out of poverty, not only in China but elsewhere. Trade helped deliver decades of disinflation for central banks and brought a wider selection of more affordable goods to consumers in the US and around the world. Yes, there were job losses, but not all were due to trade. Technology played a large part, as did the failure in some countries to deploy active labor market and social policies on the necessary scale to deal with dislocation. At the WTO, some of our biggest successes go almost unnoticed. For instance, our information technology agreement, which is very popular with the business community, especially the semiconductor industry, has eliminated tariffs on what in 2021 was close to $3 trillion worth of trade in products like servers, manufacturing equipment, computers, and mobile phones. The physical goods and capital investment that power the digital economy would be significantly more expensive without it. So if we let multilateral fora wither, if we fail to preserve what they are doing well and improve what needs improving, the costs will be high. From our trade perspective, some of these costs are quantifiable. For instance, WTO economists estimate that if the world economy decouples into 2 isolated trading blocs, it would reduce long-term global GDP by at least 5% from the current trend. That's a much bigger hit to output
than what advanced economies sustained after the global financial crisis. And we know how that played out. Poor countries and their development aspirations would be hit hardest. So my message to you today is to support multilateralism. Support strategic interdependence, not overdependence. Back the WTO to complete the reforms it's now undertaking to be fit for the 21st century. And the multilateral trading system, underpinned by a reformed WTO, can continue to deliver for the world. I want to thank the members of the WTO for their work, my staff in Geneva, and all of you for making this possible today. Thank you so much from the heart.
It's been more than 7 months since protests rocked Iran after the tragic killing of 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman Mahsa Amini. After her name became a trending hashtag from Iran and beyond, Amini's death sparked global condemnation. The protests, mostly led by women, demanded an end to mandatory hijab, but turned into a national revolt calling for the removal of the Islamic Republic and accountability for human rights violations and corruption. Activists have challenged mandatory hijab and discriminatory laws against women for decades. Since Mahsa's death and in open defiance of the Iranian regime, thousands of women have been seen ditching their mandatory hijab. Iranian authorities have clamped down and begun installing cameras in public places to catch unveiled women. Authorities have also shut down hundreds of shops and restaurants in retaliation for not abiding by the obligatory rule. Despite the heroic bravery of Iran's women, they are still treated unequally under Iranian law. Nevertheless, the fight for women's rights and, more broadly, the Iranian people's fight for freedom will continue because of the courage of Iranians who dare to protest. The people of Iran will not stop until the Islamic Republic is no more. For Nika, for Sarina, for Jina Mahsa, for freedom.
To present the Distinguished Humanitarian Leadership Award, please welcome Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, Ambassador Milan Verveer.
What a glorious celebration this is this evening of women's leadership. Thank you, Atlantic Council. And congratulations to all of the honorees. I also want to thank the Atlantic Council for the impactful work the Council does every single day and the difference it makes around the world. And one of the many places in the world our focus needs to be is on Iran. Last September, a young Iranian Kurdish woman, Mahsa Amini, died after being held by the brutal morality police for, in their eyes, wearing the mandatory hijab improperly. Her death sparked an unprecedented protest movement across Iran that continues to this day. Young women were on the front lines of the massive peaceful demonstrations, and they were quickly joined by students and university communities, by men and women of all ages, from all walks of life. They joined together for an end to the repressive regime and its dictatorial rule. They have been willing to risk their lives for a cause bigger than themselves. Thousands of protesters have been detained. Schoolgirls have been poisoned for their activism. Many others have been assaulted, imprisoned, and killed. And executions are increasing. The women of Iran continue to be catalysts for change. In fact, they have been on the front lines for decades. Their demand for woman, life, and freedom cannot be extinguished and has challenged the very foundation of the regime. We stand in solidarity with these brave and resilient women, and many around the globe have been doing what they can to raise their voices. Some, for example, have recently joined the call to remove Iran from the UN Commission on the Status of Women, given the regime's draconian restrictions on women's rights and imposing egregious limits on their freedom and human rights. Thanks to a worldwide effort, the UN vote was successful. And tonight, we stand together with the women and girls of Iran. And to accept this award on their behalf are courageous women leaders in their own right. Azam Jangravi is a human rights advocate and former political prisoner. She is primarily known for being one of the so-called Girls of the Revolution Street during the 2017 Iranian protests against the compulsory hijab. Dr. Marangiz Kar is recognized globally for her defense of women's rights and human rights in Iran. She is truly a giant in her field, a lawyer, widely published author, scholar, and activist. And she too has been persecuted by the Iranian regime for her efforts to promote equality and to end discrimination against women. And Nazanin Noor, an Iranian American who has used her platform as an actor and writer to advocate for human rights in Iran. And she has been a champion for women and girls there, active on social media as well. And in a recent post, she wrote, "I know there's an absurd and depressing amount of terrible things happening in the world at any given moment. But please, don't leave the Iranian people to fight this regime alone." And you will hear from her shortly. May I ask the women to please come up on the stage.
Good evening. Dr. Afkhami was not able to join us this evening as she is a bit under the weather. However, I would like to read to you her acceptance remarks on our collective behalf. Thank you to the Atlantic Council for the tremendous honor of this leadership award representing the women and girls of Iran who are fighting for freedom and equality. Distinguished guests, it is a privilege for me to accept this award on behalf of the millions of mothers, sisters, and daughters in Iran who, at great personal risk, are pressing for a brighter future. The seeds of Iranian women's liberation were planted over 100 years ago. In 1906, Iranian women took an active part in shaping the constitutional revolution that transformed governance and political participation in the country and in the region. Over the next 7 decades, Iranian women helped move Iran to a democratic, participatory system that was inclusive of religious, political, socioeconomic, and other minorities. In 1963, Iranian women, many of whom were choosing to delay marriage, enter a profession, even attend college, were granted the right to vote. In 1966, Iranian women successfully launched one of the most influential and powerful national women's organizations in the world. The Women's Organization of Iran would influence Iran's leadership at the 1968 UN International Human Rights Conference and the establishment of INSTRA, the UN's Research and Training Institute for the Advancement of Women. In 1975, Iran passed the Family Protection Law, which remains to this day one of the most progressive and comprehensive in the Middle East and in much of the world. Among its reforms were women's rights to divorce, guardianship of their children, and childcare for working women, among others. In 1979, exactly 2 weeks after Khomeini came to power, his very first decree was to nullify the Family Protection Law. He then also banned women from many jobs and from obtaining college degrees in over 40 disciplines. He banned contraceptives and brought back polygamy, forced veiling, and segregation of women and men. To this day, the clerical leadership of the Islamic Republic has hinged on the repression of women. Time and again, the regime's response to women's calls for greater freedom has been swift and brutal. But the extraordinary women of Iran have persevered. From the 1 million signatures campaign in 2006, where activists went door to door gathering signatures in favor of women's equality, to later pushes for employment opportunities and fair elections, women have been in the vanguard demanding change. Sparked this time by the senseless death of Mahsa Jina Amini, calls for women life freedom are still blazing across the nation. Today, women and men are marching side by side in support of a revolution that was launched by women and girls. And I'm going to pause right here for a second. I'm going to go off script because of a recent development yesterday, and I would like to inform the room of this, that the Islamic Republic was appointed chair of the United Nations Human Rights Council Social Forum. This year's theme is technology and the promotion of human rights. This comes in the midst of the United Nations Human Rights Council fact-finding mission, where they're investigating human rights abuses and atrocities committed by the Islamic Republic against their own people from September of 2022, when this revolution began. It comes amongst internet shutdowns and throttling of internet so that the world cannot see the atrocities that are being committed by the Islamic Republic. It comes as the Islamic Republic uses technology to surveil women using facial recognition technology to send fines to anybody that is seen wearing improper hijab. This comes among 2 young men, Youssef Mehrad and Sadrullah Fazeli Zadeh, who were executed on charges of blasphemy and apostasy for using technology and a social media app to discuss religion and atheism. I respectfully implore everybody in this room to use platforms that you have to publicly condemn the UN's position in appointing the Islamic Republic to this social forum. The Islamic Republic and human rights is an oxymoron, and it's a slap in the face to the people of Iran that have been brutalized, oppressed, and tortured for them to sit on this forum. This is the first revolution in history to be initiated by women and supported by men. It is the result of the work of the thoughtful, dedicated women who, a century ago, were open to learning from each other and from the rest of the world about rights and freedoms and how to achieve them. Their history shows a worldview that is worthy of the fact that women are half of the world's population and that they train and raise the children of both genders. Their unique success is based on a holistic approach that reflects the reality of the lives of the majority of the people of the world and that allows for dialogue and interactive decision-making. The success of this revolution, which is modern in its goal and in its language, slogans, and approach, promises that with the expansion of communications technology, Iranian women's latest struggle finally brings the promise of a truly global movement on which, at this moment, is in dire need of collective action, and we can all agree on that. As the protests in Iran continue, from a distance, one day's events can be hard to distinguish from those of the next. It is easy for the sacrifices of the protesters to disappear from the headlines. On their behalf, and on behalf of individuals fighting for freedom everywhere, including here in the United States, I implore you to continue your solidarity. I implore you to support democracy. I implore you to stay the course on equal rights for all. In doing so, you fuel the memory of Mahsa Jina Amini and the continued dream of freedom and equality for Iranian women and girls. Thank you.
Once again, Frederick Kemp.
Thank you, Milan, for that introduction. Thank you, Azam. Thank you, Dr. Carr. Thank you, Nazanin, for that wonderful message. A couple of you have come up to me tonight and said, so why did the Atlantic Council decide to do an all-women honoree cast for the first time in its history? We have a wide-ranging nomination process. Many of you are involved in it. We have a selection committee that's very discerning. The simple answer is it just turned out that way. These were the best leaders we could possibly identify. Thank you for the honorees for inspiring us. Thank you for all of you for supporting us. Now, the breathtaking Nova Payton, internationally acclaimed recording artist, Broadway star, will bring us home. Please listen to her every note.
Just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, oh, but I'm afraid to die. Said I might not be if I knew I was up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. Said I go to the movies and I go downtown, but somebody keep telling me, hey, don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. And I go